Well, the first thing we'll tell you about solar is we're going to start punctually, so we're going to start right now. I'd like to wish you all a good evening, and I'd like to thank you all for coming to the kickoff session for Solarize in Canaan. This is a part of the state program Solarize Connecticut, and actually our kickoff is tonight, but the program will extend through April. So everyone should realize that the program will go on through April. My name is Joanne Kennedy. I was appointed to the Utility Commission here in New Canaan by our first selectman, Rob Malozzi, who's also joined us tonight. And he asked me to look into energy efficiency programs for the town, one of those programs being Solarize Connecticut. I am also one of 3 designated coordinators to work with the Solarize New Canaan program. And before we start the program tonight, I just want to introduce everyone else. First, our first selectman, Rob Malozzi, who I think all of you know quite well. He's been our first selectman since 2011, and among his many accomplishments has been the reestablishment of the Utility Commission, which has been instructed to look into not only cell service in New Canaan, by the way, big, wonderful study just went out on the town website, I believe today, as well as looking into the natural gas line, and then of course looking into energy efficiency programs such as Solarize Connecticut for the town. Joining Rob is Beth Jones, also on the Board of Selectmen. Beth was also elected a selectman in 2011, and that was just after she had served 4 years on the town council. Beth is also on the board of the League of Women Voters, and she has been a long-term advocate and supporter of energy efficiency efforts and has played a critical role in getting New Canaan involved in many energy conservation efforts, working with the town's Conservation Commission. Also joining us tonight is Howard Freeman. Howard is right there, and Howard actually is chairman of the Utility Commission. He also serves on the boards of the Exchange Club and the ABC House, and he is working with me to coordinate New Canaan, Solarize New Canaan. Heather Lauer, there she is, okay, is the other coordinator for Solarize New Canaan. And she is an international health and environmental consultant with over 20 years of experience in healthy community development. She also has the unique distinction of being one of our resident solar installers with us tonight. She and her husband went solar in 2012 and have since added heat pumps, reducing their annual energy cost from $9,000 to less than $1,200. They would be happy to explain how solar can be the primary tool to kick oil. Also with us tonight as a solar ambassador is Etta Cantor, also seated here in the front. She's an environmentalist who started driving on waste vegetable oil in 2003, and in 2008 built a sustainable home in New Canaan that is a certified LEED Platinum. Her solar installation is used for heating domestic hot water, air, and the pool, and it generates 10.8 kilowatts of electricity for the house, her electric car, and she sells even some of it back to CL&P. Rob Fryer, I'm not sure Rob, oh, he is here. Okay, great. Rob Fryer actually is our third solar ambassador who has installed solar on his own home. And I might mention that all of these 3 people will be available during the Q&A to answer any specific questions you might have about solar installation. Rob and his wife are longtime New Canaan residents. They have had a solar PV installation for about 3 years and they love it. They also have a solar thermal heater for their pool to further reduce their carbon footprint. Okay, although Heather, Ed, and Rob will be sharing their solar experiences afterwards, they will not be part of the formal panel. Okay, providing the formal presentation tonight will be Bob Wall, this gentleman here. Bob is Director of Marketing and Outreach for Connecticut Green Bank, formerly the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority, which is the state agency that administers all the energy efficiency programs for the state, including Solarize Connecticut. To his right, actually to his left, is Bernie Pelletier, who is Community Outreach Manager in Connecticut for Smart Power, the nation's leading nonprofit marketing organization based in DC, dedicated to promoting clean, renewable energy. Smart Power has been hired by the state to work in coordinating and marketing the Solarize Connecticut program. We also have 5 representatives from PurePoint here tonight, and PurePoint is our designated solar installer. We're really proud to have actually a local installer. PurePoint was started in 2007. One of the founders is actually Tom Weiss. Weems, I always say it wrong, Tom Weems, who's joined us tonight, and they're based in Norwalk. Gary Buchanan, who is right here, is head of marketing for the company. And in addition, we have Chris Lobdell, Natalie Castro. Chris and Natalie are project managers for PurePoint, and they will be basically the people that you will be seeing a lot of, because they will be on site making sure that your installation is installed exactly the way that you want it. Also joining them are Mike Dowling, and I believe, what did I miss? Oh, and Tamara, I'm sorry, Tamara. And they are the in-house sales representatives. You'll see a lot of Mike, I believe, as he talks through with you potential solar installation contracts, various costs, various choices. And Tamara will be the person that you always want to call. She'll be the in-office sales representative to help you with any specific questions you may have afterwards. Okay, with all of that having been said, I think it's important we now start with the program. I was under 10 minutes, which is good for me. So I'd like to introduce Rob Pelosi and Beth Jones, which are each going to make a couple of remarks about solar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Very briefly, on a miserable night, cold, rainy, damp, we could all be home. I've seen more people in this audience than I see for a lot of other conversations we have in this Wagner room. So I'm really, really excited about what we're doing tonight, because there is an interest, and it's a palpable interest. So thank you. Real quickly, and I'll turn over to Beth. The most satisfying aspect of tonight is the Utility Commission, quite frankly. 3 years ago, this Utility Commission didn't exist. It was left aside by previous administrations. Beth and I and Nick got together in my living room before we were fully elected and said, the first thing we want to do is reconstitute the Utility Commission. There is a need for a repository of information. There's a need for folks to promote different areas of utility involvement in our community. And this is truly from the ground up. So to all of you folks tonight, I can't thank enough. This is better than I ever envisioned. So looking forward to tonight. Beth?
And I'd just like to thank Howard and Heather and the Utilities Commission and Joanne especially for being in charge of this. I have been passionate since I first ran for working towards making New Canaan greener. And we are really starting to move. And I think with the interest here and the town can also do a lot that, public-private partnerships, this is a great start. So thank you all for coming.
Enjoy.
And actually, I was a little neglectful, because I did also want to mention that there's been some great organizations in this town that have helped us get the word out here. I'd like to, in particular, acknowledge the League of Women Voters, the Nature Center, and of course the Conservation Commission, because they have offered to be as supportive as they possibly can, and I'm sure that we can also count on their support going forward. Thanks. And with that, I'd like to ask our panelists to please be seated. And we're going to have, I'm not sure, how long do you think the presentation is going to go?
All together, about 30 minutes.
That's not too bad. All right. Can we hang in there for like 30 minutes? And then there'll be a Q&A for as long as you would like. And actually, even when the meeting breaks up, I would love it if our solar ambassadors put their hands up again, so you can kind of see Rob, Etta, and we have two more in the back. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Can you stand up? Yes. These are I'm sorry, I've meant to introduce you before, because these are two other residents who have installed solar in their homes, and so they'll also be available after the meeting to talk to anyone who would like. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, and members of the Board of Selectmen. It's great to be back in New Canaan. I had the pleasure of helping to coordinate an open house at a Cantor's house a few years back, and it is breathtaking. So she mentioned earlier that she's still doing tours, so I encourage you to sign up and take a look at all the wonderful things she's doing. We tried to come up with a simple tagline to explain a very successful program that was created in Portland, Oregon a few years ago, then replicated by Massachusetts, and we sat down with our neighbors to the north to learn how they did it and made some adjustments for here in Connecticut. And in 2012, we began Solarize Connecticut. So the tagline we came up with is Solar Simple Together. And a lot of people don't realize or believe that solar works well in Connecticut. It's true we don't have as much sunlight as they do in Arizona or California, but we have a lot more than they get in Germany, and Germany is the world's leading adopter of solar. When you couple that with our unfortunately high electricity rates, the economic proposition for solar is undeniable. And if anyone read the news today or yesterday about the rate increases that are coming for 2015, the case for solar got even stronger. There are over 9,000 homes already in Connecticut that have put solar on their roofs, nearly 60 megawatts, which is staggering. A few years ago, we were in the hundreds. So it's literally doubling every 6 months. And I'm sure these guys can tell you some more stories about how it's going out there. The simple part is if you were interested in solar and didn't have a Solarize campaign, assuming you knew where to look, there are 70 different installers out there. They're all offering different kinds of equipment, and it's almost enough to make you flop down on the couch and say, well, it was a nice idea while it lasted. But through the Solarize program, we have gone through a competitive solicitation, and a single installer was selected, and the great thing is they happen to be practically in your backyard from Norwalk. And they offer a basic, simple package at a greatly discounted price. The reason they can offer the discount is because, starting with this event tonight, we're going to get a lot of people interested in solar that they can come look at your house and talk to. And because we're eliminating some of their marketing costs, they can pass on the savings to you. So you should be able to realize 15% or more savings over what you'd otherwise pay for solar in the state. The together part is this room. It started with Joanne and Howard and Heather and the other organizations that were mentioned, and now it continues with you. We hope that you'll tell your friends and neighbors and coworkers about this amazing opportunity. So together we can really help achieve phenomenal success here in New Canaan. What do I need to press to advance?
Right arrow.
Tom's in charge.
Help me, Tessa. Is this?
It just changed. It changed. You got it.
There we go. So just a little background. I've sort of explained how the Solarize works. To reiterate, this is a state-sponsored and town-endorsed program, so that provides great comfort to you. We'll be overseeing the whole program and dealing with any issues that come up, either from the town or from the customers. This is now, collectively we've done about 58 towns so far. So every town has succeeded in doubling the number of solar in the community as compared to the previous decade. So it's really popular, really successful. In this version of Solarize, we'll be operating with a tiered pricing structure. And what that means is the more people who sign up, the lower the price gets for everybody. So even if you're the first customer to sign up, all that matters is that what tier you're in at the end of the 18-week campaign, and you will get that lowest price, as will everybody else. And I explained how the savings are passed on because they're avoiding their marketing costs, and in turn are able to share the savings with you. So just a few notes about what our role is here. We're the overall program administrator, and we offer incentives whether you want to purchase your system or lease it. The leasing has become very popular. You might have heard of companies, you probably got bombarded by mailers or heard radio announcements, but leasing is very popular. But the reality is that purchasing a system is probably more economical and will provide a greater return on investment. So you really want to hear about both options and decide what's right for you. Our organization, with the change in our mission, has been tasked with developing new financing products, and we offer a loan and a lease product that can help make the decision to go solar even easier. We do provide oversight in terms of an inspection, which is in addition to what the town will provide and the utility. And as I said, we'll work closely with the town and Smart Power over the course of the campaign and deal with any issues as they come up. So with that, I want to turn it over to my good friend Bernie Pelletier, who will carry the next leg.
Well, to show me which arrow moves the
Just the right arrow.
Perfect. Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks again for coming out on a night like this. I represent Smart Power. We were hired by the Green Bank, Connecticut Green Bank, to really make events like this happen, to produce some of the literature that you have in your hands. And I like to say, well, our job is to work on the together part, because unlike a lot of purchases that you will have done in your life, you've bought a lot of cars, you probably have bought a house or two or three or four. Most of you are going to buy at most one solar system. And it really helps. I don't know, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a town to really get a solar program going. And that's what Smart Power is all about. So we coordinate education and outreach. Somewhere in this building, I think there are a lot of students from the high school who should have come up to you with a sign-up sheet and who have represent the environmental club. So along with encouraging the adoption of solar in the town, we also try to educate people in the high schools, develop marketing materials. Key, we track the weekly data. So how many people have expressed interest? Are there complaints? Are there concerns? And this is part of the together part. As you go through this 18-week campaign, there's a lot of support that isn't there. And I speak from knowledge because I bought my own solar system outside of a Solarize campaign. I just said I'm going to get myself a solar system. I did it all by myself. I love my installer, but I know a few things. I paid way too much. I should have made some different technical decisions than I made. And even though I love my system, I know it could be cheaper and better. Right after I got my system, I got involved in my town, which is West Hartford, and was like Joanne, I brought Solarize into this town, into West Hartford, and the price differential, like Bob said, West Hartford was more than 15% versus what I paid. So this is a good program if you're going to take this step. We really, like the Green Bank, assist all the parties as there's issues come up. And we maintain a website. And the website is important because we're going to solicit, the solar ambassadors are going to solicit success stories and pictures and events. So all of you, if you think about, if you see something like if we see Edda's house, if we should take a picture and we should put it on the website, because this is all about taking people from where they are to where they want to be, but they have to see it before they can get there. So this is helping you visualize what can be. So there's the picture. This is actually blackmail material that we have on the Heather over there was too smart to pose this picture. I have to do a call out for Joanne. The Solarize, this round 5, was about to leave the station. And actually over Google Alerts, we saw this lady, Joanne Kennedy, New Canaan, said, we're ready for Solarize. So I remember distinctly, I called you up, you were in the checkout line in the supermarket.
Too much information.
Anyway, she's been instrumental in bringing this program to town. But we identify outreach opportunities like this. We're going to have several other workshops as the program goes on. And I would ask all of you to consider yourself sort of deputized as solar ambassadors. I want to warn you, unlike ambassadors to the United Nations, you do not get diplomatic immunity. So you can't pull up a convenience store and get away with it or any of that sort of stuff. The town is committed to support this effort, and that is instrumental. The fact that your first selectman is here and says, this is a good thing, that's really big. I didn't have that when I bought my system, and I wish I did. we want to really demystify the process. So that's why people like Heather have a sign saying, ask me. That's why Etta is here, and some others are here. It's not a mystery. It looks magical. There's these things on my roof, and they make my electricity bill go down. It sounds too good to be true, but it's not. And right now you have 27 folks, and this is probably mid-year, so hopefully the number has gone up. So sort of, if we want to meet the Bob Wall target of at least doubling, I want 27 folks to sign on board. This is the website. Actually, the picture that we have there is the whole Solarize website. I encourage you to take a look at it. It has a contact form on it, so you can say, I'm interested. Email will be generated and go to these fine gentlemen. It'll have an event calendar, which right now is a little bit sparse, but as we get our workshops lined up, that's where you'll find them. Testimonials, videos. We'll have a newsroom. We'll certainly talk about the CLNP multiple rate increases, just as an example. Social media, this is something where those of you who are adept at Facebook and other things that I don't even understand, please cascade this sort of information through your own networks. And we have a toolkit of materials. I'm getting ready to turn it over to the guys that you came here to see tonight. I just wanted to give you a little tiny introduction to photovoltaics. I found this fascinating. 1839, this fellow named Alexander Edmund Becquerel. Age 19, I wish my kids were like this. Age 19, he goes into his father's physics lab, and he's fooling around. He's got an acidic solution, he's got 2 electrodes in there. Lo and behold, he notices that when he shines light into this jar, it generates electricity. Not much, but that was the beginning. So unlike a lot of things in history, like who ate the first clam, who came up with the idea of drinking fermented hops, beer. We know how this one started, so that's a good thing. And this is a very sparse history, but 1905, I don't know how many folks know, but this was actually one of the things that Einstein wrote his paper, and I think he got an award. He was still working in the patent office when he did this, but he explained what the photovoltaic effect came from. Little packets of light called photons, and that's what hits your panel, and that's what excites those electrons to do their work. All of this, it wasn't very commercial. 1950, along came the space race, along came Bell Labs, along came the ability to make silicon, and all of a sudden solar panels started to be developed for use in the space race, and a lot of them are still floating around in space and still generating electricity. From the 50s to now, lots of improvements, lots and lots of improvements. It's actually become commercially acceptable. And the most important thing on this page is in 2007, this organization here that you're going to be dealing with for at least the next 18 weeks was formed. And the great thing about them is they are the ones that take the theory and turn it into something that's both scientifically and commercially and personally viable. So one reason they were selected is they're artistes. They think not only about the electric, they also think about how it looks. Pure point energy. Why is it a good thing to have a deadline? It's because we're all, or at least most of us, are human beings. And given a time without a deadline, we will do nothing. So we will have this April 8th deadline, so use it or lose it, as we like to say. Here's our contact info, which is very easy to find after this event. And with no further ado, let me bring up Tom Weems.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for all the great introductions. So what we're going to do is just, I don't think we need an introduction on PurePoint, but I'll talk about the attention to quality as well as how solar works. I'll keep it on a pretty high level, and if you want to ask more specific questions at the end, we'll dive into that. And I'll give you real examples and ways that we can finance the solar, as well as show, like from satellite imagery, show you how to even see your own home by Google Maps, just to see if you're a good candidate for solar. So what we'll do is we'll take questions at the end, and if they're generic that kind of benefits the whole group, we'll take it right then. And then after, if you have specific questions for your home, we've got all of the solar ambassadors as well as with 5 people from PurePoint to So, as I said, we're based in Norwalk, Connecticut. We are licensed and insured, and we're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. And I'm actually one of 18 people who are NABCEP installer certified in the state of Connecticut. What that is like a commitment to really understanding the ins and outs of the solar industry. So if you go online, you can see, actually as you go through the process and sign up for solar, I suggest that if you go ahead and go on solarreviews.com, you can rate us and talk about our experiences. And if you want to learn about our clients who've already done that, we've got a 5 out of 5 rating. And on top of that, here's Joanne introduced our team, and there's just faces to the names. So Chris and Natalie are the project management side. Mike in the bottom right there, he'll be coming out to your home. We've got a master electrician and a roofing team, and Tamara's over there, and Natalie's right here. So this is actually a project we did in New Canaan, and really we co-founded PurePoint Energy because of our commitment to leave the planet a better place. And that's something that's really genuine. Every decision we make has that at its core. And on top of that, we realize that most people are going to do solar if it makes economic sense. So we really try to blend those two together. If that's the case, I feel like everybody's winning. So for anybody who's a baseball fan, whether you do solar or not, I highly recommend that you do a home energy audit if you haven't. Through Energize CT, there's a program, it's $99, and they'll do basically an assessment. They'll put a blower on your front door and see where the air is leaking. There'll be 2 guys that'll work for 4 hours. They'll go ahead and seal where it's leaky. If you've got the older incandescent light bulbs and you want to change them to more energy efficient ones, they'll swap them out. And there is actually an option to upgrade to LED lightings for a premium. And certainly I recommend that everybody does that. On top of that, to go solar, it is one of the requirements to get the incentives. So this is actually how solar works. You can put solar, like that example that I showed you a few slides back was a ground-mounted system. You can put solar on the ground, or you can put it on the roof. And when sunlight is shining, it excites the solar panels. And so what happens is it starts creating direct current, like the same thing that comes out of a battery, and they get connected together. When it's sunny, it goes to something called the inverter. And the inverter is a box that's about this big by this big. It typically goes like in a basement or a garage, although it could go outside. And it takes it from that solar power to the same power that you're using in your home. And most of the time, what it does is it actually plugs right into your main electric panel where you have all the breakers. And instead of consuming energy like all the other breakers in there, it's actually going to supply your home with power. And when you're producing more power than you're using, it's going to first supply all your lights, your refrigerators, and things like that. And then it's going to basically push the energy back out to the grid, and you'll build up credits at the retail rate. And so what happens is if you're producing more power than you're using during the daytime, at nighttime when it's not sunny, you'll still use that power from the grid. And it's possible, if you have enough roof space or enough space in the yard to be able to offset all of your power. It just depends on how big your roof is, how much power do you use. I think the example was your electric or your energy use was like 9,000, Heather, and now it's about 1,200 a year.
Well, about 3,000 a year.
About
now
3,000.
It's about 350.
350. So I mean, some houses use a lot of power. Same house, same square footage might use a third the power. So that's why we talked about energy efficiency first. So every system is monitored. So that way we we can tell the performance of the system. Also, the state is very interested to make sure that the systems are performing as promised. On top of that, it's worth noting that if the grid goes down, then the system turns off. And the reason for that is that if the grid goes down, that means that there are going to be people from CLMP that are working on the lines, and you don't want to be pushing the power out to the grid. Now, it is possible that one of the inverters that we offer, you can get a plug that will give you some power, up to 1,500 watts when the grid is down. So you could still do things like charge your cell phones and whatnot when it's sunny. There's a lot of different options. One of the options that was requested of us was to offer a battery backup system, and you can do that. It certainly would be more expensive than a generator, but if that's something that you're interested in, we can absolutely offer it. So for me, in our company, one of the most important pieces of this is actually how we attach to your roof. So there's a lot of different types of roofs, but what's shown here is pretty typical around here is an asphalt shingle roof. And so what we do is we attach directly to the rafter or the truss, the structural membrane, and what we do is we drill a pilot hole directly into that structural membrane. And then every point that we attach, we use something like this. It's a flashing. And this is the only product that we know of that doesn't void the warranty of your roof. So what happens is this slides up underneath 3 layers of shingles. And then we use stainless steel hardware to attach. And the point of attachment is raised off of your roof. So if you wanted to learn more details about that, we could dive into that. What you're looking at here is actually the substructure. So we put up rails that the solar panels are attached to. And there's different types of solar panels based on what your goals are. There's some like in the middle, which are all black. These are sun power. On the left, those are kind of silver and blue. They look pretty similar to this. And then on the top right is another one that's all black. Just a little bit different. So there's a lot of different ways you can do solar. This is actually a carport. If you've ever gone to apple picking, or if you like to apple pick, I highly recommend this. This is the Averill farm up in Washington Depot. It's a farm from like the 1750s. They actually bought the land from Chief Warmug. And we did another system from them on the other side of the road that supplies all the power to their house. This is for their farm stand. And here's another solar project that we did with the kind of the black panels. This is a project over in Norwalk. So what you're looking at here is the idea with Solarize is to keep it simple. So we have really 3 options for solar. What you're looking at is this is a test from a company called Photon, where they have this big field of solar panels, and they test over 150 of them. They get them independently, and one of our options is sun power. There is a slight premium for sun power, but when you look at it, they got 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place for performance. Solar World is another option. They got 20th, and the 3rd is Winneco, and yeah, they were in the top 20%. So they're all really high performance. So I talked about the inverters. This is typically what it looks like. So if you imagine if you have a mechanical room, a garage, or it can go outside, this is pretty much what everything would look like. So there will be some space requirements. So there's a couple different ways to go solar. You can obviously pay cash, and there's for the ownership option, there's financing. You can finance it from 5 to 12 years, and there's some great programs that you are eligible through the Green Bank. The main reason for ownership is it gives you the most flexibility You can go larger. You can go up to a 20 kilowatt system, and you're allowed to do a ground mounted system. So for the lease, it actually has to be attached to your home. One of the benefits of the lease is it truly is the most worry-free way to go solar. It's a warranty for 20 years, and it's worth noting that you don't own it, you're leasing the system. And so that's limited to 10 kilowatts, and you don't get the rebates or tax credit that you would get with the ownership. The idea is that the lease company gets those, but passes the savings on to you. So here's an example. It's a 4,000 square foot house. This is actually a house that we just happened to pull off of the street in New Canaan. If anyone knows where 13 Gray Street is, you can let them know we've already done their proposal. So obviously everyone's bill is different, but we're assuming that this bill is about $185 or $175 a month. So we're using 34 of the Winaico solar panels, and it's an 8.5 kilowatt system. It's slightly larger than the average size. It's assuming that it's south facing, which this house is in fact, and we're assuming that the cost of energy does go up about 3% a year. So I'll take you through this. This is sort of a simple way to figure out which way to go, whether you should own it or lease it. If you're somebody who goes ahead and they just want to pay upfront cash, then ownership's definitely the way to go. It's a one-time upfront payment. If you feel that that's not the case and you want to finance it, low monthly payments are the way to go, then the next thing to think about is, do you pay federal income taxes? Because there's a big 30% tax credit. It's a great incentive, but if you're, let's say you're retired and you don't have any income, then you might not pay federal income taxes. In that case, I'd recommend that you lease it. If you do pay federal income taxes, then the next thing to consider is, do you want the lowest monthly payment, which will give you the most savings right away? Or are you willing to pay a little bit more initially to own the system down the road for a shorter term? So this shows how much money you end up paying to the utility. So in this example, the system will produce $184 of electricity per month. So within the first 5 years, that's over $11,000 that you would pay to the utility. Though another way to think about it is you're avoiding paying the utility. So that's where your savings comes in. So by year 20, it's $56,000. The products that we have a 25-year production warranty, but a 30-year design life. So it's almost $100,000 over the 30 years, and that does assume that it's a 3% rate increase. CLMP has come out to say that their generation portion will increase 26% come January. So here's kind of the bottom line. If you're comparing the options for the loan versus the lease, it's a 10-year loan in this example, so your monthly payment would be $191. So compared to your savings, you actually are paying slightly more to start, about $7 more. In this example, we put out $999 down payment, and the total payments, including the down payment, would be just under $24,000. So looking at the 20-year savings, less the cost of the system, you're going to end up saving almost $28,000 over the first 20 years. And then if you look at 30-year savings, that's over $72,000. The lease, as I said earlier, it's a lower monthly payment, so $93 per month. So you end up saving, after your lease payment, $91. So that immediately is affecting your family budget in a positive way. The total amount of payments over the term would be $22,000 in this example. So the 20-year net saving is $36,885, and it's cash positive right from the start. Obviously, if you don't go cash, there is no monthly payment. You just start saving right away. and the initial payment after all the incentives would be $18,000, and the net savings over the 30 years is $78,000. So when you're comparing the three, just to kind of look at the financials, the net present value at 5.99%, which is actually the rate through the Green Bank financing for the 10 years, is $18,000, $25,000, and $17,000. So looking at the SIR, they're all great SIRs. They're all above savings to investment is 2 to 3, basically, for your savings to investment. And then the 20-year after tax rate of return is 25% if you do the loan. So imagine that's a leveraged rate of return, and the cash rate of return is 12.9. So that's an after-tax rate of return. So if you want to compare that to other investments, I looked at today for the last 20 years, the pre-tax rate of return on the S&P 500 was 11%. The 20-year T-bill as of today was 2.7, and People's Bank had do you want?
Does this include the tax credit? Your capital cost, was that inclusive of the tax credit?
Yes, it does.
Show that slide again, please.
So I'll jump right into here. So this is actually the breakdown if you were to pay cash or to finance it. So the price of the system here is $32,215, and you get a rebate right off the top, which is $6,256. That rebate, the size of it actually, it depends. The size of your system depends on how big the rebate you get is. But the cash investment or the financed investment would be the $25,959. So you get this tax credit if you go for the ownership option of $7,788. So the two incentives combined are almost $14,000 in this case, bringing your net investment down to just the $18,000. So
this is for an 8,500.
This is for 8,500 watt system, right? 8.5 kilowatts. So this really shows, your option of doing nothing versus investing in solar. So there is that shows sort of that $18,000 initial investment. In year 4 is the crossover with the utility. So what the blue line shows is you're doing nothing but just keep on paying the utility. So every month beyond that crossover, you're doing better than if you would have done nothing at all. And obviously over time, you're going to save a lot, which is that almost that 14% after tax rate return. The lease is a little bit different. So you have two options with the lease. One is you can just lock in monthly payment, and in most cases it's going to start saving you right away. Another option is you can basically do an escalating lease. So your initial monthly payment will be less, but it will increase by 2.99% a year, designed to mimic how the cost of energy increases. So here's just some resources. If you want to do the lease, we can send you a link and you'll be able to get pre-approved. It's about a 48-hour process to find out if you're qualified for it. There's 2 banks that are eligible for basically the Smart E-loan, which is the loan through the Green Bank, and that's Union Savings Bank and the Patriot National Bank. And so here's 2 more houses that are located in New Canaan. And so these houses wouldn't be great candidates just because there's a lot of shade there. The one on the right, it's a big house. There's just not a lot of place for sun there. Sorry if one of these is your houses. But to the right of the big house, there was a big field where you could potentially do a nice ground mount. So things that might make it more difficult is if you have lots of dormers or a north-facing roof. But what we can do is if you want to give us a call, we can pull up the satellite imagery, and within 5 minutes, we'll let you know if you have a good site or not. Let us know if a lot of trees have come down in one of the recent storms. here's some great candidates. The one at the bottom shows there's plenty of room for a ground-mounted system, or those top ones. It looks like they're new roofs with great southern exposure. So I think this is a good opportunity to open up to some questions. If you have any general questions about how solar works or the financing, I'd love to help you out. Yes, ma'am. 5 years. So with that in mind, there would be an additional cost if you chose to put solar up and take them down and then put them back up. So it's just you kind of feel it out based on what the life expectancy is. I saw another question. Yes?
What about maintenance if something goes wrong?
It's a great question. So for the most part, solar doesn't have any moving parts. So there's really not much maintenance to go with solar. As far as things going wrong, if it's with the Connecticut solar lease, the whole system is warranted for that 20 years. For if you go the ownership option, the panels are warranted for 25. The inverters are warranted standard for 10. You can elect to get an extended warranty. I don't have that as an adder, so if we had that, we just have to talk to Sefia about that, or the Green Bank.
Why wouldn't you offer extended warranty on own? It makes business sense. You have the same warranty as lease. You should have basically same warranty for owner-owned system too. Doesn't make sense. Why are you guys not offering?
Sure, it's a good question. I mean, we can take a look into that. The idea is that we have looked at that in the past, and we just don't have that offer at this point. But I understand that at this point, if that's really important to you, that 20-year warranty, it's already set up with the lease. If you really want to go the ownership option, we can explore that.
And if I can just add, Tom, that with the lease too, there's also insurance on that because you don't own it, someone else does, so it's insured. So it's warranted as well as that insurance wrapper on that lease.
Sure, thanks. Yes, sir.
Yes, what is the weight of the roof-mounted assembly, say for a 7.5 or 8.5 kW system? How much would that weigh? What inspection do you need to make sure that the roof can stand that, and 2 feet of snow on top of it?
That's a great question. So for every system we do, we have it approved by a structural engineer. But to answer your question directly, it's about 3 to 4 pounds per square foot. Given that there are some exceptions to that, if you have a flat roof, a ballasted system, like a non-penetrating ballasted system, will weigh more. So it just depends on the design, but typically about 3 to 4 pounds per square foot. And as I said, with every system, we take a look at the structural integrity and make sure that it can handle the weight. If it can't, structural upgrades can be done, assuming that the rafters and trusses are accessible. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain the difference between a ground system and a roof system?
Absolutely. So the ground systems, here's a typical ground-mounted system. It's this is about a 10 kilowatt system. Of course, it's in the beginning. There we go. So what we do is we go ahead and we put in these helical pilings into the ground. So we have a tool that drills basically a giant screw into the ground. That's designed for the snow and wind loading, and they're spaced about every 8 to 10 feet or so east to west. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't have any obstructions near it. So you would need a larger yard, and New Canaan has some specific setback requirements that we could explore with your particular property. I love the ground-mounted systems if you have room for it. Solar panels perform a little bit better when they're cooler. So these will perform typically like the best as long as there's no shading. On top of that, they're very, like if you ever did want to clean the solar panels, generally rain's enough to do that, but if they're on the ground, they're very accessible. Yes, sir.
Are there other options to get more than 1,500 watts when the power goes out? You offer other smarter inverters without the battery backup?
So what we have done is done multiple inverters. So you could do, let's say you were doing a 9,000 watt system, you could do three 3,000 watt inverters, and then you'd have up to 3 kind of 1,500 watt plugs. It wouldn't give you, in that case, 4,500 watts of power at one load, but the technology is just not necessarily there for that without the batteries. Yes, sir.
What is the maintenance required for accumulation of leaves, pine needles, and possibly dust and dirt on the surface?
Good question. So if your roof is steeper than 15 degrees, typically you don't need to do anything because it's steep enough where the rain is going to wash off and things aren't going to get caught underneath. If it's less than 15 degrees, it's from studies that I've read, it's generally worth cleaning the panels once a year. So if you've got a flatter roof, then that's something to consider. It is possible to tilt up on a less steep roof. It's just it's something that we could look at as a case-by-case study. Yes, sir.
Would an installed system increase your assessed value and therefore increase your property tax?
It's a great question. So Connecticut has an incentive that it will increase, well, depending on the realtor, it should increase the value of your home. But what it won't do is increase your property taxes. There is an exemption, both residentially and commercially in Connecticut.
We recommend that you file with your local assessor by November 1st of the year of the installation, and you only have to do it that first year. You'll be covered forevermore.
Yes, sir.
Do you accommodate houses that don't have southern facing?
Sure. So you definitely do not need to have a direct south-facing roof. If you have an east or west-facing roof, you get about 80% of the sun that a south-facing roof would get, depending on the angle. Obviously, less steep, you'll get more. So once again, it's a case-by-case basis. We'll run the numbers based on each individual site. So although this is a cookie-cutter program, what we do is we customize, we tailor each proposal to your individual house. So we'll come out with a rendering of your home, so you actually know what it's going to look like ahead of time. And we'll do the financial returns based on your site. I have this tool right here. And what this does is it takes a picture where the solar panels are going, and it has a GPS that knows where the sun is every hour of every day of the year. And so if there's an obstruction like a tree or another building, we can overlay that with 30 years of data from the National Renewable Energy Lab, giving us a very accurate projection of how much power you're going to produce. On top of that, the state's going to double check all of our work once we're done, so to confirm that what we promise is actually what you're going to get.
I just wanted to add, it's an important question, that not every home is suitable. Tom showed some pictures of examples that would not be ideal. Sadly, on one of those houses, my house isn't oriented properly and I have a lot of tall trees, but if that's the case, there are some other options for you to make energy improvements. By all means, get the HES assessment and consider energy upgrades so you can save money even without going for solar. So just wanted to reiterate that not every one of you will be suitable for solar, but many of you will be.
Absolutely, we'll let you know if you have a site that just it doesn't make sense, and we'll ask you first what your goals are, and if there are some people who are willing to look at the return on investment from a longer period, and they're really doing it more for the environmental reasons, and which, you know, we'll still present it and with a realistic expectation. So, yes, sir.
What happens to a lease for a house that's sold? Point number one, and point number two, and you alluded to it briefly earlier, but what are studies showing about recognition of the value of the own system on sale price?
Sure. You know what I'll do is, part of this Q&A was I was going to pull members from my team. So I'm going to pull Mike Dowling to answer those questions.
Sure,
Put him on the
happy
spot.
So I think the first thing you had asked about was the lease and resale with the lease. So the Green Bank, and you might be able to add on this as well, but I believe they did a survey not too long ago and found that there was a lot of success with that as far as the houses being sold with a lease, and that the new home buyers wanting that lease, they just need to be approved for the lease. But if they're approved to buy your house, then they're probably going to get approved for the lease as well. And the other thing you would ask was about increasing home equity value.
Yeah, and if you go with the ownership option.
Yeah, so it will increase the equity in your home. Forbes did a study on that. They found that you can get up to 96% back of what you invest as equity in your home. And we're happy to send that over to you and share that with you if you'd like to see that article.
Could you stay on the lease option for a second on the sale? What if the new buyer doesn't want the system?
Then you can, what would be the best option for that?
So in that case, like the worst case scenario would be that you have to pay out the rest of the lease payments, and you know, at that point, you know, they can take the system down. So that, you know, I guess it wouldn't be too much different than if you bought it outright also.
So you run a schedule that shows that amortization out over the 20 years, and you'll know what the PV is at that point in time.
That's right, and we could, you know, coordinate with the actual bank that does the lease is AFC First, and they're tied with the Green Bank.
Can you go back to that slide that shows the PV on the three different options?
Different options.
Right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. So would you just explain to me, please, briefly, if you could, the lowest PV is your best option? Is that what you're showing there?
Well,
like
it depends. It depends on what you're looking at. So, are you talking about the top line?
Yeah.
The net present value.
The top line.
So the net present value, actually, in this case, it looks like the lease has the highest net present value. The idea is there's no upfront investment. So the net present value actually does look better. But from your perspective, you also have to weigh in some other intangibles. Like, you know, my opinion, and based on what I've read, is I think that it would increase the value of your home more if you had an ownership position in it.
No, well, what I was trying to determine from this, we kind of moved quickly earlier, is
sure.
So I want the higher PV. What's best for me, my higher PV or my lower present value? Because that's my cost.
Okay, so I got it. So I got it. In this case, the way that I ran the model, the higher net present value is better. Gotcha. It's kind of the value of the system. It's like, this is like how much value it's adding to your family. Okay. Like if you were to take all the future cash flows and bring them to the present.
There's no way I'm looking at saying the lowest PV is
okay.
I paid. Right? So.
No, okay, that's great. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What if you use a 10-year loan and sell your house before you pay it off?
Sure. So it's not a problem. You can pay off the loan early. There's not a penalty for doing so. Yes, sir.
The lease payments last 20 years,
Yes, sir.
and then the facility might last 25, so the next 5 are free?
So that's a good question. There's some options at the end of the lease. They can take it off at year 20, or at the end of year 20 if you want them to, or you can buy the system from the lease company. I can't really tell you what that value is because of like depreciation laws and things like that, but my feeling is that you could get a pretty good deal if they're willing to take it off for free.
And you could also extend the lease. That's what they're
can, and you can extend the lease. There you go. Yes, sir.
For non-residential buildings, why is commercial buildings, same program apply?
It's different programs for commercial and not for profits. So we could talk about that offline. The Solarize program's really designed. And then you've got a question here.
I'm sorry, just to follow up on that, what about condominiums?
So the program's not designed for condominiums.
It could be.
Oh,
It depends on the
But-
condo association.
That's what I was, okay, so that actually was a question I've been meaning to ask in meetings. So if a condo association was willing to have the entire building, right, have solar, you can't do it per unit.
No, you would have to do it per unit. It's complicated.
Okay.
As I understand it, the roof is commonly
Belongs to-
owned by all.
It's owned by,
there are s-
but everyone would have to agree that they were gonna do it?
We have done some
Okay.
projects with condos. It can be an uphill battle for many different reasons, given the association's approval. So it's sort of in that gray area. If anyone lives in a condo, we'd be happy to work with you.
The question has come up, Bob, so,
Yeah.
just individually, so it would be nice to
I think
know.
the answer is maybe.
So the answer is maybe. So it is maybe, it's not no. I mean, that's good to know.
The condos right across from the police station, some of the units have solar panels up there already, and all those condos were built at the same time and off of.
So that's a
electric.
positive sign for that condo
Yeah,
association.
yeah, exactly.
That's great. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the technology and the capital cost of these solar panels is changing very, very rapidly. Is there any flexibility in your lease plan to change the panels, say 10 years out? What we have today may be absolutely obsolete and inefficient. So do you have that flexibility? And the other question is, where are the architectural solar panels? Someday we will have slate roofs that are solar panels themselves. Right now there's a trade-off of a aesthetic, the clunky panel has an aesthetic downside. What is the status of the architectural solar panels? And, the possibility of changing the technology 10 years out on a 20-year lease.
So my recommendation would be that if you're looking at if you feel like you really want to change the technology in the relatively near future, the lease wouldn't be the right option for you because there isn't that flexibility designed within the lease. It's worth noting that, and I'm not sure like if you're thinking about it from an aesthetic perspective, but really like you're putting in this investment and it's a long-term investment, so you're going to get a lot of savings, in the future. So let's say that you make this investment. I don't expect that people would want to change it because you've already paid for all those future savings. So by taking the panels out and putting in new panels, you're kind of losing out, like let's say on the next 15 to 20 years worth of savings that you've already paid for. And as far as the technology getting a whole lot better, I mean the technology has been proven. It's as that presentation, that Bernie had gone through. It's not changing very rapidly. What's happening is they're getting more efficient and you're getting more power per square foot. If you're about getting the most advanced solar panels out there, that was one of the things that your solar ambassadors had asked for. And we offer sun power, which you can get 345 watts in one panel, where kind of the standard efficiency is 250. So they are like leaps and bounds in front of anybody else. And so if that was important to you, we could present that, on a case by case basis.
Could you just talk about the trade-off though with the?
Sure. So it's a.
Account for shade then.
Wait, say that last part.
Talk about the microinverter trade-off of that, because what you just entered another.
Okay, sure. So one of the other benefits, like you might hear about something called microinverters, and we did offer it. It is an option that you can get. And what a microinverter does, instead of one big inverter, like let's say in your basement, you put an inverter on the back of every panel. There's a study that was done that, the general idea behind it is like if you have shading, to go ahead and put it in a microinverter. But there's a study that shows that it doesn't actually help as much as you may believe it would. So with sun power, they have a different technology that basically lets the power pass through shaded areas to where you're going to get a lot more power per panel. And if anyone wants to see what that study is, we can follow up. You just come find us. We'll write your name down and we can send you sort of a video on that.
What's the approximate percentage upgrade to go with the better panel?
So it's about before, granted this is like before incentives, it's roughly a 25 to 30% upgrade, but you get a 30% tax credit. So we could just run it both ways, and obviously you have a higher initial investment, but when you're looking at something over 25, 30 years, we find that a lot of people are willing to pay a little bit more, for that other warranty. And someone mentioned warranties. The other thing that's worth noting about SunPower is they have the only true 25-year warranty, which what that means is that they're warranting the craftsmanship of the panel for 25 years as well as the power production. Whereas everyone else in the industry offers a 25-year warranty on the production, but like a 12-year warranty on the product. So I mean, what they say is if for some reason the panel's not performing like it should be, it's warranted and they'll cover it. But yes, ma'am.
I'd like to go back to the aesthetic question.
Yeah. Oh, I
that was a
that.
big. Well, it may not have a full answer right now, but it was an important question that we all asked you, right? Because McCain realizes very concerned about aesthetics. And I have noticed that the solar panels have changed. You now have, you have the choice, and you were showing it earlier, the blue, silver, and then you can get the one that's all black. And if you put the all black totally on, if you cover the entire roof, it almost looks just like you have like a black slate roof, right? Or sort of
That's
like
right.
that. Right. So I think really the question really is, there's obviously, the technology itself may not be changing, but the aesthetics of the technology may be changing. And so this is new, right? Is there an expectation there's going to be like a newer model of that coming out?
So what there will be at some point in the future is like, they do make them now. They're like solar shingles.
Okay.
But they're expensive, one, and they're not very efficient. Okay. So you're not going to get very much power per square foot unless you have just this huge south-facing roof. I think you'd be really disappointed in the performance. Whereas if you went for something like this, you'd really see a lot of power, which is going to give you the most amount of savings and the biggest environmental impact. So it's, there's obviously custom options out there. It's just you kind of have to know up front that you're not going for any type of return on investment. You're just going for something that's a little bit more unique, and maybe that will change in the future.
Tom, which panel is that? Which manufacturer?
This is SunPower right here. So
that's just a scaled down version. Just
that's the actual panel. It's about 3 feet by 5 feet roughly. Maybe a little cumbersome. Yes, ma'am.
Does Solar City use SunPower also?
They do not.
What do they use?
They recently acquired the company that makes the modules. I don't even think they've started to use those yet. Our experience has been from when we go out to homeowners that a lot of times they don't even divulge what they're going to install on your roof. So it's really hard to tell. It depends on what I guess they are able to use at that time.
And I would say it's worth knowing because if you look at the studies, like there's a big difference between the highest performing and then the laggards. And the other thing is, as I said, that 30-year lifespan, if one panel performs 5%, 8%, 10% better, then that's every year. That's compounded, and the electric rates compound that. It makes a difference. Yes, sir, in the back.
Please summarize and repeat the questions. Some of the questions that are in front of the room.
Yes, I will do that. We'll be starting now. Yes, sir.
So, 2 questions.
Can you do one at a time so I can repeat
One
it?
at a time, okay, so that everybody can hear. So the first question is, to enjoy the incentive from the Connecticut Green Bank recipient. First, the prerequisite to obtaining that incentive is to do a HES home energy audit, right? So do you simply have to calendar or schedule the audit? Do you have to comply with what is recommended in the audit? What's the mechanics?
I got it. So the question is really about to get the state incentive. You have to do the home energy audit, and what do you actually need to do? So they're going to make recommendations, but you don't actually have to follow through on those recommendations to get the rebate. Like let's say they say, hey, you should get some new windows, and you have old architectural windows that you like. You're not required to do that to get the rebate. What's your second question?
And the second piece is your case study. The average home 7 kW, but you're upsizing it for new painting, so it's an 8.5 kW nameplate. So that 8.5 is 8,500 watts, and for 8.5 kW kilowatts. Now, is that the nameplate or is that the production? Because production is typically 20% more on average.
Okay, so the question is, in my example, is this 8,500 watt system the production or the nameplate? And the answer is the nameplate. So you're actually producing more than that. And the way that the production works is it's based in kilowatt hours. So it's this is the 8.5 kilowatts is how much power like you could roughly produce during noontime equivalent sun. So you're at 6 in the morning in the summertime, at least when there's some sun out. You're not going to be producing that full amount of power. It looks just like a bell curve, and when you go solar and you get to see your monitoring, you'll see it like on a nice sunny day. You'll be producing close to that 8.5, and there's a little bit of a derate, but and then it kind of comes down from there.
And then the final question: for these installations, do they have to be grid tied, or can somebody do, let's say, a ground mount system to power a pool house or a shed and decouple, and then it's always up, then it's always live?
So the answer to your question is to get the rebate, you do need to be grid tied. So what we can do is we could put in a battery backup system for you. Oh, sorry. The question was, can you go off grid essentially? And the answer is like to get the state rebate, they don't want you to go totally off grid. Granted, also that's not the most economic way to do it, but if you wanted to do it, we could do it. You wouldn't get a rebate. You still get the tax credit, and we can help you do it.
The benefit of being on the grid is that you sell electricity back to the electric company.
That's right. So that's a great point. Is like it's actually the returns are much better when you're connected to the grid, because there's a lot of time where you might be producing more power than you're using, and depending on your storage capacity in an off-grid situation, you might be losing power. So by selling it back right at the retail rate, that's a dollar for dollar trade. It's a really good deal.
One way to look at it is a lot of people buy solar, they're thinking, since they have distributed generation, that resilience or redundancy, but the fact of the matter is that it disconnects if the grid goes down. However, those numbers are similar to the cost of a home generator, which is an islanded asset, which only turns on in the event when the power goes down. But in this case, you're generating power all the time for 25 years for the cost of the generator. So you get that redundancy.
So, I mean, we'd be happy after, like, if you want to go into some detail about off-grid, if anyone's interested in that, we can talk about that. Now, it's got to be way more than 99% of the systems in Connecticut are grid tied, but we've done off-grid systems, so yeah, we can talk to you about that. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Besides washing panels, what would be the maintenance and repair schedule, say, over the 5 years? And
So-
at what cost?
So something that's worth thinking about is that sometime between year 10 and 15, it's likely that the inverter will need to be replaced. And depending on the size of your inverter, that could be $2,000, $3,000, something like that. They're really designed to be modular. So you can really almost unplug and plug in a new one. It's not quite that easy, but it's not, it's designed to be quick. And that's really the main thing that will happen. If it's important to you, you can get that extended warranty for the inverter. But I think that, in 10 or 15 years, the technology is going to be better. And so if you wanted that ability to go, off grid or something like that, it'll be available. There's a question over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's when selling back to the grid, can you go back to zero? Like, can you actually get the phone?
It's a good question. So that's everybody's dream, and it is possible.
Can you repeat that, Tom?
That's
what you repeat.
Thank you. So the question is, can I produce more power than I need and sell it back to the grid? So one piece of that is when we do your rebate, it's based on your historical usage. So you're not going to get incentivized from the state to go much bigger than what you currently use. And then if you do, like the way it works is with the net metering, if you have extra credits after a period of a year, and there's kind of a true up period, I believe it's in, is it March?
March. Here's
There
the
you go.
expert.
The expert. So in March, then they will write you a check, but it's at the avoided cost of electricity, which is sort of like the wholesale rate. Do you remember what the rate? It was 8 cents. There we go. Look at this. So that's actually pretty good. That's higher than I expected. So 8 cents per kilowatt hour, granted. Come January, the cost per kilowatt hour with CLMP all in is going to be closer to 20 cents. So just to put that into perspective.
Right? If they raise their costs, shouldn't they have to raise the rebate?
So it's based on the generation.
It's based on the generation.
Which is going up.
But if it's going up, they should have to raise what they would give back, right?
Yes, the question is, if CLMP keeps on raising the rates, we should, I guess it was a comment, we should expect that to go up as well.
I think we have time for maybe one or two questions.
Yeah.
And